Welcome participants, welcome to the SWAYAM course. This is week 1 lecture number 5. Our course name is Introductory Animal Physiology and module name is Cardiovascular System, and our today's title is Heart Morphological Characteristics and Conduction System of Heart. Myself, Dr. Mukesh Kumar Bharti. I am the assistant professor in the Department of Veterinary Physiology and Biochemistry, Faculty of Veterinary and Animal Sciences, Banaras Hindu University. So today we will discuss about the how means that heart is functioning, what are the morphological characteristics are there, what is called as a cardiovascular system. Then we will discuss about in brief about the heart anatomy. Especially what are the physiological significance is there. Then we will discuss about the properties of cardiac muscle, and then we will discuss about the types of circulation. Mainly we will see the different types of two important types of circulation is there, and then we will see what are the heart valves and the pacemaker, why it is called as a pacemaker cells. And then we will see conduction system of the heart, means how the transmission of impulse is transmitting from the their origin of generation to the different parts of the heart. And then we will see the electrophysiology of the heart, means how the action potential is generated and what are the significance of that one in the physiology of the heart. So these are the overview, what are the things we are going to discuss today's topic. So let's start with the main topic, that is the cardiovascular system. And cardiovascular physiology, as we know, it is a study of the function of the heart and the blood vessels. So cardiovascular, it says a cardiovascular. Cardio means heart and vascular means the blood vessels. So it is a study of the heart and the blood vessels. Father of this cardiovascular system is the William Harvey. He did so many research on this one, and he is known as a father of the cardiovascular system. So mainly it consists of the heart and a system of blood vessels that help in the distribution of blood. Once it is getting pumped by the heart, then the important function of the vessel is to transport that blood from the heart to the different parts of the body. So heart is mainly divided into the pulmonary circulation is a low pressure system and systemic circulation is the high pressure system. So its main function is to transport the blood, and it also maintain the pressure gradient, because sufficient pressure if not be maintained in the blood vessels, then the transport of that blood from heart to the different body part will not takes place. If we will see the gross structure of the mammalian heart, we will find that we see that the heart is a cone shaped muscular structure that is located in the thoracic cavity within the mediastinum between the left and right pleural cavity and protected by the ribs from the about third to sixth intercostal space. Mammalian heart is mainly composed of 4-chamber structure and having the 2 atrium and the 2 ventricle. So means what is happening here, the blood is received into the left atrium by the superior and the inferior vena cava, and then blood will pass into the left ventricle, and then it will go to the different body parts. So right ventricle deoxygenated blood will go into the lungs for the oxygenation, and from the lungs it will come into the left ventricle, and from the left ventricle again it will go for the circulation for the body parts. So this heart is made of the different layers are there, and one important one is called as a myocardium, and the myocardium of the ventricle is much thicker than compared of that of the atrium. Why it is much thicker? Because ventricle have to pump the blood to the different body parts, so that's why the myocardium of the ventricle is much thicker compared to that of the auricle. Also the left ventricle if you see the ventricle, especially the left ventricle wall is much thicker than compared to that of the right ventricle. And heart is covered by 3 layer from the inside to the outside, that is called as a endocardium, myocardium and the epicardium. Endocardium is the innermost layer that lines the chambers of the heart and covers the heart valves and is continuous with the lining of the blood vessels. It also have an important layer that is called as a pericardium, which is a double sac-like structure that is relatively inelastic and that protect the heart against the acute expansion. It have a secretory glands which secrete the pericardial fluid and that protect the any kind of friction which is provided during the contractions. So it have a very important role in protecting the heart from any kind of shock. So there are two important layer are there in the pericardium, that is called as a visceral pericardium and the parietal pericardium. We will talk about the a little about the structure of the cardiac muscle because it have a very important structures are there, like cardiac myocytes are short branch striated muscles and it have a very peculiar structure that is called as a intercalated disc. This intercalated disc separate the individual cardiac muscle cells from the one another. It also have very important structure that is called as a desmosomes. Desmosomes also known as a macula adherens found near the intercalated disc, and this desmosomes help in joining the cells together and stop separation during the contraction by binding filament. So this desmosomes keep the cells together and it will help in keeping the cells together. It also have very important features like gap junctions that will help in the rapid transmission of impulse from one part of the heart to the other part of the heart. So gap junction will mainly transport the electric current between the cells. Then it is said that the cardiac muscle act as a syncytium. Mostly it's act called as a functional syncytium. Cardiac muscle is called as a functional syncytium. Why it is called as functional syncytium? Because this all the cardiac muscle act together. So whatever the contraction will takes place, all the muscles will contract at one time and all the muscles will relax at one time. So that's why it's called as a functional syncytium. Two important types of syncytium is there. One is called as a atrial syncytium and another one is called as a ventricle syncytium. Atrial syncytium means once the atrium will contract at one time and ventricle will contract at the one time. So this will allow the proper filling of the ventricle. The auricle will contract and then the ventricle will contract. So together they are not contracting. So atrium will contract at one time and then the ventricle will contract at the another time. So it will help in the effective pumping of blood from the heart. Another some few important another properties of cardiac muscle is that it have a mitochondria percentage that is around 40% of the cytoplasmic volume than compared to that of the skeletal muscles. Then it have a sarcoplasmic reticulum instead of the endoplasmic reticulum, and that then this sarcoplasmic reticulum will store the calcium inside the cells. And why this extra calcium is required? Because for the cardiac muscle contraction extracellular calcium is required and that is mainly stored in this sarcoplasmic reticulum. And it like striated muscles, it also appears as striated because of the presence of the light and the dark band. And also this cardiac muscle have a long refractory period and also the long duration of action potential. So because of the presence of this long refractory period and the long action potential, generally the cardiac muscle did not get fatigue because of the presence of this long refractory period and the long action potentials. Then this cardiac muscle follow the all or none principle, means all or none principle means whether it will contract at one time or it will not contract at all. So that is called as a all or none principle. So either it will contract maximally or it will not contract at all. So that is the all. It have very important feature. This is the very important features of the cardiac muscles. Then comes to the types of circulation. Mainly the two types of circulations is there. One is called as a pulmonary circulation. The pulmonary circulation is the part of the vascular system that circulate the blood through the lungs. So what is happening here? The deoxygenated blood is delivered into the pulmonary system by contraction of the right ventricle. So once the right ventricle will contract, it will send the deoxygenated blood to the lungs for the oxygenations. Through the pulmonary artery, the deoxygenated blood reaches to the lung. So this is the exception where the artery carries the deoxygenated blood. This is the exception. So the pulmonary artery carries the deoxygenated blood to the lungs, and through the pulmonary vein generally means vein generally carries the deoxygenated blood, but here in this system the pulmonary vein carries the oxygenated blood that reaches the left atrium, and then that causes means completed the pulmonary circulation. As the gases as the gas are exchanged, the color of the blood changes from the bluish maroon color of deoxygenated blood to the bright red color of the oxygenated blood. In the adult, pulmonary circulation is the only place where deoxygenated blood found in the arteries and oxygenated blood found in the veins. So this is the exceptional case, means only found in the pulmonary circulation. The next circulation is called as systemic circulation. Systemic circulation refers to the movement of oxygenated blood to the all area of the body and return of the deoxygenated blood to the heart. So systemic circulation means once the blood will be pumped from the left atrium, it will go to the all body parts, that is the oxygenated blood. It will distribute into the all body parts, and after the distribution, once the deoxygenated blood will be metabolized, that blood come into the right atrium. So that is called as a systemic circulation. It is also called as a greater circulation, or it is also called as a peripheral circulation. Then heart have very important these valves called as a cardiac valves. So there are mainly 4 types of cardiac valves are there. 2 are called as a atrioventricular valve, AV valves, and 2 is called as a semilunar valve. So this between atrium and ventricle of each side is an atrioventricular valve called as a AV valve. So left side and right side. The left side AV valve, atrioventricular valve, is occasionally called as a bicuspid valve. Left side AV valve is called as a bicuspid valve because it have a 2 distinct flap or cups. So another more commonly another important name of this bicuspid valve is called as a mitral valve because it is imagined that resembles to the bishop's mitre or the 2-sided hat. So that's why the name has been given the mitral valve. So left sided valve is called as a bicuspid, and the right sided AV valve is called as a tricuspid valve because it has a 3 flaps or cups. So that is called as a tricuspid valve. Another means that valve, cardiac valve, we call as semilunar valve. So 2 semilunar valves are there. Each ventricle outflow is controlled by the semilunar valves that ensures the blood flow only from the ventricle into the artery and not into the opposite direction. So it prevents the backflow of the blood, okay, going back to the heart. So it mainly prevents the backflow of blood. Similar valves have 3 cups like leaflet with convex side facing into the ventricle. So 2 similar valves are there. One is called as a aortic valves and another is called as a pulmonary valve. So aortic valves lies at the junction of the left ventricle and the aorta. At the junction of the left ventricle and aorta, the valve present is called as a aortic valve, and next is called as a pulmonary valve. Pulmonary valve is at the junction of the right ventricle and the pulmonary artery. So at the junction of right ventricle and pulmonary artery, the valve present is called as a pulmonary valve. So this is these 2 are called as a semilunar valve. Then we will discuss what is called as the pacemaker and the conduction cells. So 3 subtypes of cells are specialized for the impulse formation and the conduction. So these cells are called as a nodal cells, Purkinje cells, and the transitional cells. Nodal cells are mainly the sinoatrial node nodal cells and the atrioventricular nodal cells, means AV node and SA node and the AV node. So impulse generation taking place in the sinoatrial node, and then it will transfer from SA node to the atrioventricular node, and then it goes to the ventricular means muscle through the bundle of His and the Purkinje fiber. Then another one is called as the Purkinje cells. These specialized cells that is required for the rapid conduction of impulse that found in the bundle of His, and this bundle branches within the ventricular wall. So this why these Purkinje cells have the rapid transmission of impulse, because these Purkinje cells have highest number of gap junctions, and because of the presence of highest number of gap junctions, these Purkinje cells are able to transmit impulse much faster than compared to the other cells. Then third one is called the transitional cells. These are structurally between the Purkinje cells and the contractile cells and are thought to be the connecting link between these two cardiac cells, means the nodal cells and the Purkinje cells. So that is called as a transitional cells. So these are the three important subtypes of specialized cells that is used for the conduction. So in brief, we will discuss about the sinoatrial node as a node. Sinoatrial node is also called as a pacemaker. Why it is called a pacemaker? Because it helps in the generation of impulse. So these cells have a autorhythmicity property, means they have they can generate their own impulse by itself. So that's why this is called as a pacemaker cells. This sinoatrial node are situated in the right atrium and have the property of autorhythmicity, and it generates the impulse for the heart contractions, and these impulse will passes through the gap junctions to the adjacent cells. So this sinoatrial node is called as a pacemaker of the cells. Another term is there that is called as a ectopic pacemaker. So what is called ectopic pacemaker? If the pacemaker will found not at the place of the SA node, then it is called as a ectopic pacemaker. So a correct definition is that a pacemaker working other than the sinus node is called as a ectopic pacemaker. Sometimes what is happening, SA node is not able to generate the proper amount of impulse, or the SA nodes are not functioning properly sometimes. So other cells start generating their own impulse. So that type of pacemaker is called as a ectopic pacemaker. So here some of the example is there that rate of impulse discharge from the SA node is around 70 to 80 beats per minute. From the atrioventricular node it is 40 to 60 beats per minute, and from the Purkinje fiber it is 15 to 40 beats per minute. Thus here you can see that SA nodes control the beat of the heart, because its rate of rhythmic discharge is much faster than any of the other cells. In some cases, some other parts of the heart develop a rhythmical discharge rate more rapid than that of the sinus node. It may be in the AV node or in the Purkinje fiber, and that may act as a pacemaker. So an ectopic pacemaker causes an abnormal sequence of contraction of the different parts of the heart. So rhythmic contraction will not take place. In case of the if some cells will develop their pacemaker like activity other than the SA node, then the rhythmicity of the heart will not be maintained. They will contract in a different manner. Different parts of the heart will contract in different manner. So that is called as a ectopic pacemaker. Now coming to the conductive system of the heart, means already means a brief idea we have given. They are the sinus SA node, then there will be the internodal pathway that conduct the impulse from the sinus node to the atrioventricular node, and the AV node in which the impulse from the atria is delayed before passing into the ventricle. So main function of the atrioventricular node is to delay the impulse. Why delay? It is delaying the impulse because it is giving proper time for the ventricle to get filled. So that is the main function of the delaying of impulse in the AV node. The AV bundle which conduct the impulse from the atria into the ventricle, and the left and the right ventricle branches of the Purkinje fiber. So these all correspond to the conductive system of the heart. Then question is there, why heart have a special conduction system? The heart is provided with a special system for, there are two important reasons is there. One is that the heart is generating rhythmical electrical impulse to cause rhythmical contraction of the heart muscle, and second is that conducting these impulse rapidly through the heart. So, when this system function normally, the atria will contract ahead of the ventricle. So, when all these things means system will function means properly, at that time the atrium will contract ahead of the ventricle, which allow the filling of the ventricle before they pump the blood through the lungs and the peripheral circulation. Another special importance of the system is that it allow all portion of the ventricle to contract almost simultaneously, which is essential for the most effective pressure generation in the ventricular chamber. So, that's why this heart have a special conduction system. So, why electrophysiology of heart is important, because in the action potential graph generally one important feature is coming in the cardiac muscle, that is called as a plateau phase. So, that plateau phase is very important for especially for the cardiac muscles. So, that is why little understanding regarding the electrophysiology is important for us. So, as we know that primary function of the heart is to pump blood, which required the heart to generate contractile force. And because the cardiac action potential is the trigger for cardiac contraction, the mechanical activity of heart is dependent upon the electrical activity. So, whatever the mechanical activity will be done, that will depend upon the electrical activity, because the electrical activity means generation of the action potential. Whatever the action potential will be generated, that will give sufficient kind of mechanical force to the heart to do their work. So, that is why the electrical activity is very important to perform the mechanical activity of the heart. For the heart to beat efficiently and continuously over the lifespan of an animal, which may include many millions of heartbeats, the electrical activation of the heart must occur repeatedly in a proper sequence. Another important feature is that this electrical activity must occur in a proper sequence. If any kind of disturbances will be there, then the heart function will definitely hamper. So, this electrical activity must occur in a proper sequence. Now, fundamentals of the electrophysiology principle. That electrophysiology principle means I must say means we have little idea about the generation of the action potential, means how the cells remain during the resting stage and how cells are are acting when they are getting depolarization or the repolarization. So generally during this resting stage, the interior of the cells is negatively charged and the outer of the cells is the positively charged. So, the distribution of ions, if we will say we will see that the more potassium ions are found inside the cells and more sodium ions are found outside the cells. So this occurs during the resting stage. Once the channels are there, these channels are there like sodium channels or calcium channels or potassium channels. Once this channel will open, this will lead to the depolarization. So, once the sodium channel will open and more sodium will enter into the inside the cells, that will changes the polarity of the cells, means that negatively charged will get little bit diminished and then the generation of the depolarization will start. So, that is the basic concept for the depolarization, how the depolarization will start from the resting state. So, that is the fundamentals principle. Other than that, potassium channels are also there, that is also opening during the repolarization phase, and then again the negativity inside the cells will become more. So, that is the concept of the resting membrane potential, depolarization and the repolarization phase. So, this if we will see the means here we can see the action potential of the cardiac muscle, we can see there are four important phases are there. One is called as a resting phase, another called as a depolarization phase, and then one important features that initially I have discussed, that they have a plateau phase. So, this is the very important in case of the this cardiac muscle, they have a plateau phase and then again the finally the repolarization phase. So, that is the four important phases of the action potential of the muscles of the cardiac system. Then what is the value for the resting membrane potential of the cardiac muscle and the SA node? So, resting membrane potential of the sinoatrial node SA node fiber is around minus 55 to minus 60 millivolt in compared to minus 80 to minus 90 millivolt for the ventricular muscle fiber. So, the resting membrane potential of SA node is lesser than that of the ventricular muscle fiber. The cause of this lesser negativity is that the cell membrane of the sinus fiber have naturally leaky sodium and calcium channel. The cardiac muscles have leaky sodium and calcium channel, and once this sodium and calcium channel will open, that will causes, that is the main reason for the lesser resting membrane potential for the SA node. This is the plateau of the cardiac muscle. Here you can see that this is the rapid depolarization due to the opening of the voltage gated fast sodium channel, and then there is the plateau phase which maintains the depolarization due to the opening of the voltage gated slow calcium channel and the closing of the some of the potassium channel. Then last phase is the repolarization due to the opening of the voltage gated potassium channel and the closing of the calcium channel. So, I want to discuss this point is that plateau phase is mostly developed once the calcium channel opens. So, due to the opening of the calcium channel, the negativity will remain maintained. So, that will lead to the development of the plateau phase. And initially I have told that this cardiac muscle have long refractory period as well as long action potential. So, because of this plateau phase they have a longer means refractory period as well as the longer action potential. So, because of this they have the longer duration of action potential. Then what is called as the refractory period of the cardiac muscle. The refractory period is definition is that is interval of the time during which normal cardiac impulse cannot re-excite an already excited area of the cardiac muscle. Refractory period means that the period, if the muscles are in refractory period, whatever the impulse you will provide, they will not lead to the generation of the new impulse. So, that is called as a refractory period. It is of two types, one is called as a absolute refractory period, another is called as a relative refractory period. So, absolute refractory period during which a cardiac cell cannot initiate another action potential for some duration of time. Whatever the impulse means you will provide, they will not lead to the excite of the cells for the another period of time. And another one is called as the relative refractory period during which the cardiac muscle is difficult to excite but can be excited by a very strong excitatory signal. So, during the relative refractory period, the cardiac muscle can be excited if the higher amount of impulse can be provided to the cells. At that time it can be re-excited. So, that is the difference between the absolute and the relative refractory period. So, normal refractory period for atrial muscle is around 0.15 second, whereas for the ventricular muscle it is 0.25 to 0.3 second. So, this is the absolute and the relative refractory period. So, relative refractory period is a physiological phenomenon mechanism allowing sufficient time for the ventricle to empty and fill prior to the next contraction. So, what is the significance of refractory period? Means it will give the proper amount of time for the ventricle to be get filled and get means emptied. So, that is the importance of having the longer refractory period in the cardiac muscle. Then AV nodal delay means and their impulse conduction. How the AV node help in the delay of the impulse conduction. So, AV nodes and its adjacent conductive fibers delay the transmission of impulse into the ventricle. So, earlier I have also told that this main purpose of this AV node is to delay the impulse. Why they are delaying the impulse? Because they are giving the sufficient time for the auricle and the ventricle to be get contract. So, delay in the impulse conduction from the SA node to AV node is around 0.03 second. So, from SA node to AV node delay is around 0.03 second. Then there is a delay in another 0.09 second in the AV node itself before it passes into the ventricle. And final delay of another 0.04 second occurs mainly in this penetrating AV bundle, which composed of fibrous tissue separating the atria from the ventricle. So, in total, the total delay in the atrioventricular nodal and the atrioventricular bundle system is 0.13 second. So, why this kind of delay is taking place? The delay is there, the significance of atrioventricular nodal delay is that it will allow the atria to contract and fully empty into prior to the ventricular stimulation. So, that is the significance of having the atrioventricular nodal delay. So, next class we will discuss about the cardiac cycle, and then we will discuss the what is called as a cardiac output and what are the factors responsible for maintaining the cardiac output. So, these things we will discuss in the next class. Thank you.